Okay, so Lynn tasked me with an impossibility to turn an entire peppermill in less than an hour and assemble it and the likes. So I'm going to take some shortcuts and I'm going to do this fairly quickly. I'm not going to be concentrating too much on absolute finish or anything like that. It's more just the steps involved in doing a peppermill. So I've obviously started by rounding out the blank before I got here, and I did that between centers. And I'm using the live center and the, wherever it goes, the safe center to do this. So that if you get a jam, it's just going to spin and it's not going to throw the block away on you. And then while I was on there, and I'm orienting my block so that the top of the peppermill is to my left and the bottom is to the right. I've already turned a dovetail on this end and then just another tenon on the opposite for grasping later. So this is going to be for a program. Yeah, so this is the program peppermill. So you know what we're after is, it consists of two components. I'm probably going to be chastised here for moving around on the camera too much. So this is the program mechanism. So this goes into the base, and this is the actual grinder. And this little piece goes into the top, and it fits to the shaft here, and that's what rotates the grinder in the bottom. And there's another similar to this, which is the crush grind. And I like these two types of mechanisms because I don't really like the little types of kits that have the little knob at the top, the metal knob. So I much prefer these to that style. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Do you take questions, Carl?
I'm going to be very frugal on questions because my time frame is very, very tight. Okay, but at the end I'll try and do as much as possible on questions, and I'll be here after as well. Okay, appreciate it. The key thing here, there's really only two really key measurements. Is the diameter of this piece in that little section between this little tooth here and the bottom rim, and then between this tooth here and that bottom rim. So those are the two distances that we want to get right. And the others, the diameter that we're going to use for the main shaft and that is not all that important. It's just more aesthetics and capacity that we're dealing with. So I'm going to start right into this. And again, I will be here for the evening if you want to have a little bit more questions that are detailed. But other than that, I'm going to try and get this thing finished within the time allotted. So I'm putting this in, I'm aligning it with the point that was in there when it was turned around. And I'm using a dovetail jaw on this end. So this helps align it properly while I'm in there. So I'm really clamping this tight. Now the other thing I'm going to do is, I have a number of chucks, so I can afford to leave things in chucks whenever possible, and that's definitely something that you want to try and do, is to leave a piece in the chuck until it's completed. Because every time you take a piece in and out of a chuck, you are going to lose concentric to a degree. So I avoid that by not removing them. So I've marked. The other thing I do is I'll make a little drawing. That's not going to show it all. So there's a little drawing. So I make a little drawing of what I want using the widths and heights, and etc., and the shape roughly on paper. I'm not following this completely religiously, but at least I have a guideline as to where I want to go. So I'm not one to look at the wood and have it speak to me. I want to know what's going to happen to the wood before I start. So I usually, and that's more probably because of my science background. So I've divided this up, so I'm going to allow about 2 inches at the top for the top of the piece. And we grab this guy, so that would be the top here, and this would be the base. So I'm going to start by parting at this point, and I'm going to part in about halfway initially. So I'm just using a thin parting tool because I want to use as much, or take away as much, as little space between these two pieces as possible in order to minimize any grain distortion between the top and the bottom when it's finally put together. So now that I've got that in there, I've set the caliper to roughly 2 3/4, and I already have a tenon on my top piece, and I want to put a tenon on the top of the base piece, and I want to put it on that side of that parting line. So I'm going to use just a little bit wider parting tool. So I'm just going to give here a little radius. And check with my gauge. So that's it now. So I'm just going to level that across, and that's, I don't know, maybe 5/16, something like that. If I was at home, I'd make it a lot smaller. And I'm just going to use my parting tool on an angle to make that into a dovetail. So at that point, of course I need a C down in there, so I'm going to have to wind it a bit. I can part a little bit further. So now that I get it down close to the center, I'm just going to take off a little bit of pressure. Make that a little smaller. And we'll play it safe. I'll take this off, and I have a little saw. And yes, you can part these in half, but I'm trying to minimize any tear out. So I could just take this and twist it. But that's going to cause a lot of tear out, and it's going to give me a little bit harder time when I'm trying to find the drill hole in the center. So I'm just going to use the brute force method and pull this off. Here we are. So I'm going to set that aside, and first thing I want to do is clean up that face. So I'm going to go to a gouge X and just do a pass across that face. Now, I'm not worried about that surface because we're going to come back to that later. But what I am going to do is just use a skew on its side, and I'm going to make a little dimple in the exact middle to give me a guide for the drill. So I'm insetting. There's a little, some people call this a tenon, some people call it a spigot, but it's going to go up inside here so that none of the mechanics are going to show when the piece is together. It's all wood. And I think for me, it's just a better looking piece. So I need to drill a 3/8 or 1 3/8 diameter hole up into that. So this is one of the ways I sped things up, is I found 4 different Jacob's chucks and mounted all my drills so that they're ready to go. So I'm going to turn my speed way down, and I'm going to find my magic tool. So I'm only going to go in, using this diameter, I'm only going to go in about 3/16 of an inch. So I have a little piece of aluminum that this little piece out here is 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to use that as my guide. So initially, I'm going to bring this up just so it's just starting to take some wood. So it's just, because remember on the Forstner bit, the teeth on the outside, and this is a sawtooth, the teeth on the outside are a little bit farther down than the actual cutting plane of the bit. So I want the cutting plane of the bit to be touching the wood, not just the teeth. Okay. I know my tool rest is locked down. I know this is flat against the block of the wood. So I'm going to put a piece of tape against this face, and I'm putting the tape on the quill. So now I can start my drill and start drilling in. And I want it to drill fairly slow, and I'm going to turn the quill fairly slow because I want it to find its center. And I'm just going to go out here until that tape, or the edge of the tape, shows just beyond the 3/16 mark on this gauge. So I'm just holding that like this and watching for that tape to hit that face. And at that point, I know I have a 3/16 hole.
Good tip.
There's a guy, where is he? Right over there? That I got the tip from. Dave.
No.
Really?
Did he make your gauge for you too?
No, I came up with that when I was trying to cut down my time on turning the piece. So again, I'm just going to try and get this next piece, and this is a critical one. So this is a 7/8 inch diameter, and it has to go up in, and this is on the this is on your directions for this kit. So it says it has to go in somewhere inch and a quarter, I think it is. Inch and an eighth, sorry. I'm on the wrong stat. Inch and a quarter. So again, my little piece here has a section between here and here, which is an inch and a quarter. So I have the tool against the wood. So now I can take that tape, remark the quill, and start drilling. So this is a Colt maxi cut. And if you have nice straight grain wood, you usually have less problem, but if you have highly figured wood, the possibility or probability that the drill is going to drift to one side becomes increased. And that will cause you problems. So that's why I like to take it nice and slow, let the drill find its way. And the other thing I heard, and I don't know where I heard this, but I don't pull the bit out under power. because if you pull the bit out under power, it's still cutting. So if I get a little bit of play in my tailstock, it could actually start cutting on its way back and even enlarging that hole somewhat. So now I'm going to put a little notch inside so there's a little clip up in here, and there's an edge down here, and this little edge here is wider, it's about 1 inch in diameter, so that it won't go up inside that 7/8 inch hole. But in order to stop it from coming back out, we're going to drill a little slot inside where these little clips are going to go into. So once it goes in and clips, it's not going to come back out. So that's the next step. Now that is not in these diagrams or in these notes. They just say they epoxied in. I don't use epoxy unless I absolutely have to. It's just one more step. But to replace that step, I have a different step. So I have a tool that has a little notch in it at the very end, and I've already pre-marked it, and you really should use a vernier to measure the fact that you actually went in 3/16 and not just a little bit more or a little bit less. So to get this 100% accurate, I should be actually measuring the distance of that, and then measuring the offset that's required from this little base here up to that little tab, the bottom of that little tab, and then adding the two together to get the offset from this side of the tooth down to that blue tape. So this, I'm going to get a little bit more speed, and I'm going to align that blue tape with the face, the exterior face, because I'm allowing that 3/16 inset. And I'm just going to zoom. And now I have a little inset in there.
Where did you buy that tool from?
It was in a workshop that I bought. So I don't know where it was. It's a Robert Sorby tool. But
Woodchuckers.
woodchuckers, or just get an old scraper and just grind a notch. It gets trivial to make. Dave has a much more elaborate tool that he designed. If you pass that around, you'll see the little notch deep inside. So now that I have that, I'm going to come back to this face, since it's on the chuck, and I'm just going to take a skew on its side, and I'm just going to put a little chamfer or a bevel on the top of that inside 7/8 diameter hole, and that'll just allow the mechanism to slip in a little bit easier because those little tabs have to compress, and this will allow it to have that. So at this point, I'm done with the top piece. So I'm going to leave that set aside, put a different chuck on, and this is another dovetail, but it's a number 3 jaws. I was using number 2 on that just because I only had two. I only had one of the number 3 jaws for the dovetail. So that's that. So I'm going to take. So this is where we parted. So that's going to go into the jaw. And it was done between centers. So I'm going to put that drive back in. And this will just help make sure that we're properly aligned before I tighten things up. Clamp that down. So this is where we have to drill all these holes from this end in order for this mechanism to fit properly. So, just before I do that, I'm going to clean this face off lightly. Now I'm going to come in and take the middle part off, because I was only able to go in so far cleaning it off. And all I'm trying to do is just flatten it a little bit, because I want that next bit to start level with this plane up here, not with that little dimple that was sticking out. So again, I'm going to create a little inset for my drill to find. And this time we're going to start with 1 3/4 inch diameter sawtooth. So again, this is straight from the description that comes with this chuck, or this toolkit for that grinder. So I'm going to come in, and I might as well send this one around as well. So the first little bit, 3/4 inch depth, is going to 1 3/4 inch. The next, is it 1.5 is going to be 1.5 depth and 1.5 width. And then the rest of it is going to be 1/16, so you'll be able to see them. And you'll see that there's going to be another inset inside this as well. Turn the speed down. There, mark my quill so I can judge the depth. So my handy little gauge has a little 3/4 inch diameter width here, so we're going to use that. Probably should have went with the low range. We're on high range on this machine. In here. Watch for the 3/4 inch to go up. So those little jars, because it got caught, you can actually see this starting to wobble a little bit, but that's not a problem because we got tons of wood to deal with to crack that. So now we're going to step down to the 1.5 inch. Make sure I got 1.5 inch. Wrong one. But very nasty. 1.5 inch. So again, I'm going to put this in so it's just up a little tight. And now I'm going to drill in 1.5 inch deep, and this is my little measure again. So I need my tape, and we'll be frugal. Maybe we won't, there we go. Maybe use the tape. And we'll start connecting. not much wobble in the bit, but there's good sign. So everything else is going to be centered on this hole when I'm doing stuff. So the fact that you see wobble on the outside doesn't matter. So I'm going to line everything with the hole that I'm just boring, which is the 1.5 inches. So again, I don't want to cause tear on the way out and increase the size of that hole unnecessarily. So now we're going to go to a 1/16 inch bit. And this one's going to go all the way through. Now obviously this is not going to go all the way through, but it'll go most of the way. So we're going to take it as far as it will go. And this time I don't need to make any measurements. So I'm just going to let it butt up against the inside. And now you can drill as far as it will take us. And this little gizmo from here, it's just a piece of aluminum that I made. The distance from here to here is the distance from this face to that tab. So if that fits in there, I'm golden, which it does. So now I know when I push that in, that tab's going to engage into the slot. It's just a way of reassuring me that my calculations are correct and we can proceed. Now if we were off, we could do some minor adjustments here before we change things. So there is no center point on this end of that block because that was just cut off with a handsaw. So in order to help ensure a concentric join, I'm going to cheat and use a live center and mount my third chuck on here. Now the other thing I should have done, and I did not, and I'm going to pay for it if I don't, I need to true up this tenon on the outside so that it is concentric with the hole that was drilled on the inside. Because you can see there is a little bit of a wobble there, so every little bit counts. So just using a parting tool again. Now these are not dovetail. This other next jaw, if I had another dovetail jaw, I would use dovetails, but so now I know that that is concentric with the inside hole, which is important. So now I can switch this guy out, put this guy on. And tighten it up. I always turn the chuck halfway and tighten and do it again and again. Whether it makes a difference, I have no idea, but for some reason, every time I go to the next hole, I can always move it just a little iota more. So to me, it's worth the effort. Now we'll take this guy out of here. This jaw can come off.
You couldn't do this at home.
What's that?
You couldn't do this maneuver at home. You'd have an M33 on the front and a 1 1/4 on the back. Now you're 1/8 both ways and you can do it.
Get an adapter.
Do they sell them M33 for the adapters?
Yep.
I only have the 1 1/4.
Okay, so now, once more, we're going to clean the face with a gouge. Now remember, this is an unsupported out of this end, so you want to take your cuts fairly easy. So I'm going to leave that pen in there. It doesn't bother me. Because all that wood's going to go away eventually anyways. So again, I'm going to make that little dimple in the center to start the drill point. Bring that down. And we're going to go back to our 1 1/16. And now we're going to drill through the rest of the way. So we have an 1 1/16 up to somewhere about there. So now we're going to come in from this side and meet. And there is no specific distance, it's just until they meet. So I heard it pull through, so I know it's out. So that is complete. Now there may be a little bit of a discontinuity between the two holes in the middle, but it doesn't matter. It's inside, nobody sees it. If you really want, you can sand it out, but it's not really a concern. Okay, so I'm just going to clean that face lightly. With a gouge. I'm just doing little pull cuts. I'm doing kind of a shearing scrape. So my tool's on an angle. And I only need to do a little wee bit of diameter in the middle, because that's going to be the top of that little tenon. That's going to be the top of this little tenon. So now we're going to form that little 3/16 tenon, which is 1 3/8 wide. So to help do that, and again to make sure things are nice and concentric, I'm going to put the live center back in, and I'm going to put it inside that 1 1/2 hole. So that's going to give me some stability and alignment all in one shot. So I'm going to take a parting tool, and you can do this with a skew, a parting tool, spindle gouge, roughing gouge, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to make a 10-inch. And this may be roughly an inch and 3/8. So I'm going to set the caliper to 1 3/8, and I'm going to go a little bit larger because I want this to be a really snug fit on its initial setup. So we still got lots of thickness. Here we are. So at this point, I'm close to 1 3/8, and I'm just going to taper that so it's slightly narrower on the outside than it is on the inside. Because what I'm trying to establish is a good, tight fit of that tent, or that spigot, whatever you want to call it, into this little inset. So right now it's not even starting, so I know I can take more. This is one of these things that can happen quickly, or it can take forever to get that matched properly.
Roll to the front.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I'm going to take that down a little more. Again, I'm going to do it on an angle, because this happens quickly. When it happens, it goes from not fitting to too loose, and we don't want too loose. This is the most frustrating one, this little fit, but highly important. So it's just starting to fit. So I'm getting some friction, so now I'm just going to twist it, and you're probably going to hear some sounds you don't want, but that's helping mark. So now I can see that there's a little bright spot on that bevel, so I know that I have to take, so right now it's sitting like this, and about halfway there's a little bright spot, so from that bright spot out I want to take it level. Because it's getting friction at this point, so now if I take it level across, it should come in and still be a nice tight fit. So always support yourself when you're doing it. And check often. So this is exactly the same thing that you do when you fit a box lid. Completely identical. So there, that's nice and tight, things on there and holding. So now I can take this guy out of its chuck. And take this chuck off. And put our top back on. Now I'm going to take we're going to ignore it because I don't want to back up times too tight. Before I took that out, I should have cleaned off this face out here and put a slight depression towards the center. I can do that somewhat on this side to correct that, but I really should put a little bit of a taper towards the center there so that when these two pieces fit together, that they fit on the outside ring just like you would do for a bowl, for the foot of a bowl. So now I'm going to put this guy in there, and I can line the green up if I want, it really doesn't matter. And lock it down, and now we can actually turn our mill. So for the one that I picked out here, which so from this seam at the top, actually I'm going to take my diameter down initially. It's a little bit wide. So we could take this diameter down initially. Our finished diameter, roughly, is going to be about 2 3/4. It's just an outside profile, so there's nothing gospel about it. It can be pretty much anything you want as far as the shape is concerned. All the critical stuff has already been achieved, which is drilling the hole, and fitting this spigot so that it fits into the top. So now I want to come here and I'm going to mark roughly 3/4 of an inch down and 1 5/8 down from there. Yeah. I'm going to set a caliper at about 1.5 inches. Now remember, we have a 1 16th inch hole down the middle. So we'll be a little generous. It'll be, say, 1 5/8. So that's well beyond anything critical. So the shape I'm going to have, which unfortunately is not going to show on here, this is going to be a wide point at that line, and then it's going to slope in as the top's going to round in, and that's going to round into it, and then from here it's going to be like a cove and come down to the thin part, and then it's going to come back out and more like a shallow bead out here, but just one smooth curve. So initially I just want to establish my low point, which is here, and then we can go from there. So use my calipers now. I've got lots of little holes. That's close enough. So from this point, I'm going to make a curve in. So most of the wood is off this corner, so I'm going to take a bit of wood here, move back further, back further, back further, as I take that wood off. I'm going to come back and meet that curve from the opposite side. So I'm going to now start the cove at that line that I marked up on this side. And just take my time a little bit more so I get a cleaner cut. Gently forming that arc as I go. And when I get to the middle, the bevel of my tool should be perfectly in line with the bed ways. Otherwise I'm still on an angle. So I'm going to come back and I'm just going to lightly round off this end. Can somebody give me a reading on how much time I have? Lots. Lots? Is that according to you or according to Slim? So I'm just going to lightly round off this end, or not round off, just put just a gentle curve. Straight lines are something you try to avoid. This thing loosens up, that's why I'm making sure. Now you don't want to take too much off his base, because the more you take off the base, the narrower it gets, the more unstable it gets for sitting. So now I'm going to kind of make that little S curve, forming a resting V, and then going into the cove. So this is an area where, again, you can take 5 minutes and have a rough looking piece, or you can take a half an hour to finesse these curves in order to get something as elegant as you can. So I don't have that time, so we're just going to make a rough match here. And I'd actually go down a little bit more narrow. This is pretty thick in the neck at this point. So I regard this piece done for now, although at home I would certainly spend a lot more time getting this cleaned up. So now I'm going to work both of these sides into, from this side into the union, and on that side into the union. And the widest part of my top is going to be kind of in that ballpark. So again, I have to take a lot of wood off this corner, a lot of wood off this corner, so that's where I start. I start here, take a little bit, start there, come in, back, come in, come back, come in, keep going deeper and deeper each time. I also have to be conscious of the fact that there's a 1 3/8 tenons down inside here. a little bit hurried. I lost track of where my join was, so I'm not getting a nice join there. So I'm going to have to change my curve. They call these demo pieces for a reason. So now I'm getting beyond the range of my gouge because of that shape. I can't come down into that valley. So I'm going to switch to a half-inch spindle gouge, which is much more pointy, so I can get further down into that valley. I think we got it a little bit more in line with where the actual separation is. I don't like the curve, but we're just going to stop there. Again, we can play with these curves till the cows come home. So I'll call that a finish, even though I would not leave it there finished at home. So there's my piece. It's got a little rough edge there yet. We can move on. So I need to create a little bit of a bevel chamfer, whatever you want to call it, on the inside face of this opening where the inch and 3/8 is, so that we touch at the outside of this instead of flat across the whole thing, and that'll give us a better fit. So I'm just going to do a really light cut, and it's almost imperceptible unless you put up a straight edge. And you always should put up a straight edge to make sure that you do indeed have a caper there, which I do. So now I regard, and I would have had this all sanded out and everything as well before I took it off. So now I can take this out of its chuck. Find the key. Anybody see where a key went? There it is. So, again, we cheat when we can. No, that's right. And we're going to transfer it to this. So this is just a little mandrel, if you want to call it, that has a 7/8 inch here and 1 3/8 here. And I'm going to jam that up inside here, and that will allow us to turn the top. So if I throw this on here, now you can take this out of its chuck. Now we have it lined up using this, but we also have different alignment capability on this end because the original dimple from initial turning is still there. So I can also use this to help align the block. And at this point, since it's just sitting on there with friction, it'll stabilize it or support it as I turn the top. Where's the bottom bit? Okay. Now, there are crush grind and there are pro grind. And even though they look identical, they are not. So this is a crush grind, this is a pro grind. The diameter, actually the step distance between here and that little tab here, this is slightly smaller on the pro grind. So that's one thing you have to consider in order to get it fit in there correctly. The diameter of these is close enough that they both fit under friction. You don't have to really glue them in unless you had a lot of drift on your drill as you were drilling in and you had a loose fit, then you might have to epoxy. The bottom is different. So I think, if I remember correctly, the diameter of the pro grind is about 20 to 25 thou narrower than the diameter of the crush grind. The crush grind, majority of the time, you can push it into the drill hole, no issue whatsoever. The pro grind, you're probably going to have to use epoxy to build it up, to fill that gap, because it's just slightly enough that it can make a difference. The distance from here, this lip that hits the bottom of the 1.5 inch hole in the top of that tab is the same. So to do the insert into the top, it's just a matter of lining it up, pressing it. Now because of that 3/16 inch depth, this surface, when it's all the way in, is below here, so I can't just put it on the table and ram it. So I take a little nubbin, it doesn't matter, as long as it's similar in the diameter, and some sort of clamping device. And there I heard a little snap. That's all I need. Make sure I hear a little snap. So that will not come out. And it's a tight enough fit, it will not turn in there. Now on So I use the lathe not only to turn but as a press. So I can tell initially, so remember we put a little channel way back in there that these little tabs should fit into. So I'm not going to push it all the way in, but I just want to see how snug this is going to be in the cherry. Yeah, this is the cherry by the way when they turn. Yes. So I'm getting friction as I push this in. And it's not just because of the tabs. I can see here that the little, around that plastic, there's I think 6 little fins. And I can see that the fins are hitting against the wood. So that means it's probably going to be a tight fit. So I should not have to use epoxy on this one. So to help things, I need to find my key again. There it is. So I made a little stubbin, it just had a hole through it, and I'm going to put a chuck on here to grasp that. So that guy's in place. And then on the opposite end, I'm going to put another chuck. Oh, I kind of stymied myself there. Well, I'm going to leave it with it. Normally I put a chuck on there and I put this little stubbin in, which has a little hollow in the middle of it, because I don't want to press on here, because that's pressing ceramic against ceramic, which could chip your ceramics. So instead I have this little hollow, and this outside edge will ride on that edge of the mechanism. So if I line that up, put that stem in the hole.
Are you going to cut the link after?
Nope. So I'm going to put that stem in the hole and then lock this down and press it in. So that's pressing in as far as it'll go, and it's stable. Now, yeah, so it's in there. So I cut the length after the whole thing is in place. So this already has the mechanism in place. Now this one I did have to epoxy because there was enough differential in the actual 1.5 inches that this mechanism would not seat 100%, so I did epoxy, even though there's clips in there to hold it from coming back out. And so now I take the lid with the mechanism in place and I push it on as far as it'll go, and now I can measure the distance between here and here, the bottom of the top and that lid, or that edge on which it's going to ride, the top's going to ride, and measure that. And then I can just zero my caliper, and then I want to increase it roughly 1/8 of an inch, because I want to make that shaft about 1/8 of an inch shorter than I'm measuring. So I'm going to measure out that 128, and now I can take a marker and mark that distance. Yeah. Take a good set of side cutters, line up the jaw. Put that off. Take a file, just clean that surface off as much as you can. I do a lot more than that, obviously. And find the top. And there we are. The cracked height. So, the Peppermills here, and you can be as fancy as you want. There's a blend of crushed grind and pro grind here, but these are just obviously straight woods. This one, I think that's apple. That's an elm branch. That's cherry. This is a laminate of cherry on the outside, maple, walnut, and maple. And this is this is a Celtic knot. So I made I made a drawing so I could size my Celtic knot appropriately. There's the blank that was glued up for that guy. So I'll make a matching salt and pepper. So this is about an inch shorter than this, so the pepper will be a little bit larger than salt, so you can differentiate. This is the glue up for the Celtic knot. And so that if anybody was here at the previous 2022 event, the Celtic knot that I did for the pen, identical to this. The only difference is the angle at which I was done. So this is about a 13 degree, I think it is, 13 or 14 degree angle. And I try to have it so that the Celtic knot is in the widest part of the actual top. So there's lots of things you can do in the design. This is box elder, something like that. So a completely different design, but again, the mechanics of it, all the steps up to forming the outside are completely identical. All the measurements, all the hole depths, the setting of the little inset, everything is the same, including the little 3/8 tenon. And once I get all those done, then I work on the outside, and that's it. So these, with the exception of this, all the ones you see up here are finished in tung oil. So I usually use a Minwax tung oil. There are lots of tung oils out there. I don't know of a bad tung oil. So these are polymerized tung oil, not 100% tung oil. Otherwise, I'd be waiting another month for these to dry. So these have all been, with the exception of this, all those have 3 coats on over 3 days. So I put a first coat on, I saturate it completely to the point where it stops wicking into the wood. And every time I see it wick into the wood, I just keep adding it and adding it and adding it. And once it stops wicking into the wood, I let it set up just maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then I wipe it back completely bare as possible. And then every 5 minutes or so, I'll re-wipe it because I don't want any of that oil coming back out and beading on the surface. And then I'll let it dry for 24 hours. And then I'll lightly sand it with a, I don't know, 400, 600, 800, doesn't matter. Or even a Scotch pad, fine wool, 4/0 wool. Just completely go over the outside, take any little fuzzes off this, put another coat on, saturate it, let it set for a minute or 2, wipe it completely back to 0 surface if you can. And again, re-wipe it every 5 minutes or so, and then set it for another 24 hours. And you can build up more and more layers, and the more and more layers, the more and more sheen you'll get. Certain woods, like maple and the more dense woods, especially hard maple, not soft maple, 2 coats would probably be ample because it's such hard wood. Woods like, this is a Manitoba maple, which is a really soft wood. The initial one of this took a ton of oil. And I would probably put another, at least it has 2, it'd probably have another 2, maybe even 3 coats to have it come up to the sheen of this one on the end. So again, depending on what is, you get different things. This was done on the lathe, completely finished, and it was actually sanded with, it was sanded up to 800, and then it was gone over with triple E, and then it was gone over with friction polish by the same company. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, shell wax. Yeah, shell wax. So it was done on the lathe. And I was hoping to do all the finishing on the lathe, and then I realized that 2 hours does not fit into one, and I knew Celine would get the hook out and pull it. So, are we there? We're probably there past. Okay, so if you have any questions, I'm here for the night. Feel free to come up and ask. I usually interrupt, that's not rude. Feel free to come up and ask any questions you have, and I'll certainly try to answer as much as possible. Thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Carl, for coming. He is an active member in quite a few guilds and is absolutely an authority in the space. He does workshops, he does demos, and the experience that he's got is absolutely fantastic. And he had been one of our previous demonstrators if you guys had come to our event before. So please come and talk to him. Take a look at his work. What he does is beautiful, and he did travel for this, so we very, very much appreciate you coming. Again, thank you, Carl, so much.